I'd invite our next panel to come straight on up. We're going to get going without any delay. We're going to go into this next session. And we have good. We have enough microphones. Okay, we're moving on now to a discussion about investor relations with some of the best practitioners of the art. These are amongst our panelists up here. We have some nominees. So let me introduce who we have to talk about this for this next session. Next to me here is Bernard Vincent Dai, or Bobby Dai, from the Philippines property developer Ayala Land. He's president and CEO. We are really very happy to have you here, Bobby. Bobby joined Ayala in 1997, held various leadership positions over the years. In 2013, he was appointed COO. 2014, became CEO. Ayala, which is about a $10 billion market cap, is nominated today for 8 awards. 8 awards. It's very impressive, and these include Best IR by a Senior Management Team, as well as Best Overall IR for Large Cap Companies, Best IR in the Real Estate Sector, and Best IR in the Philippines, and others as well. Next over, Melissa Ortiz is also from the Philippines, Head of Investor Relations with Filinvest Land, one of the largest real estate companies in the Philippines, and approximately 850 million market cap. Melissa has over 20 years of experience in investor relations, financial planning and analysis, and corporate planning. Before joining Filinvest in 2014, she was the head of IR for Manila Electric Company, and then ABS-CBN, a media company. Filinvest is nominated today for Most Progress in Investor Relations. Next along, Narun Wiwatanakrai is Executive Director, Chief Marketing Officer for Siam Wellness Group, the first spa company to be listed on the SCT, approximately $215 million market cap. Narun joined the company in 2007. He also chairs the Risk Management Committee. And Siam Wellness is nominated today for Best IR by an MAI company. So this is a new category, of course, especially for our first event in Thailand. And so we're privileged to have Narun here. And Zeid Abdul Razak is Manager IR and Treasury for Malaysia Airports, approximately $2.5 billion market cap. Zeid joined Malaysia Airports in May 2014, previously had extensive audit experience with Ernst & Young in both the UK and Malaysia, and today nominated for Best in the Sector, as well as Best IR in Malaysia. Bobby, let me start with you. I want to ask you about investor relations and the strategy and how it fits in with the strategy of the company. Because I think this is a theme already begun when we looked at over the last session and thinking about the company's place in its progress and its strategy and what it needs in terms of investor relations to support that strategy. Could you talk about how you see that, how you devise IR strategy?
Well, what I do, well, first of all, thank you, Neil, for having me here, and good afternoon to all of you. What I do with the, I guess with our IR team is to basically set, very clear objectives that are basically in line or is in line with our strategic thrust. One objective is to make sure that we do have a stable shareholder base. Very important for us because primarily we're community builders. We build estates, townships, typically are long-term projects. So we need to make sure that our investors, our shareholders, buy into that type of business. The second objective that I basically set with our investor relations group is to make sure that the return that an investor makes is equivalent to the value accretion of the company while he or she or the company is an investor in Ayala Land. So basically making a fair return, making sure that while they're shareholders of the company, that they make the commensurate value of the increase in value of Ayala Land. And then the third objective is to make sure that we try to minimize volatility in the stock price. So given that, it's important that our investor relations group communicates clearly number one, what we're all about as a company, our vision. Secondly, important to communicate what our strategy is. And thirdly, to make sure that the short, medium, and long-term plans are communicated clearly to the investor group. I think if we're able to do that, then my sense is we'll be able to achieve all those three objectives.
Okay. And Melissa, maybe you could step in and talk about how you get senior management to see it the way Bobby does. I mean, a lot of companies don't have the privilege of having a CEO who understands investor relations in the same way, and sometimes it's seen as a distraction or not a core activity. How do you help?
Performance is being measured through that, then there is an they put an importance into going through all those activities.
That's a good point. So this is something that we see, isn't it? That management believes the value of the company is here, and investors say it's here, and you're trying to close that gap. Now, right? Then, and it's their responsibility.
And once they realize that, it's very, very easy to get them to go to road shows or to conferences, because they know that although they cannot do it every month or every week, right? But they have to allot a bit more time. Like, for example, for our senior manager, for the CEO, I asked for about 3 weeks in 1 year just for her to go around. So because there's a value to investors seeing the CEO talk about the company, how she intends to grow the company, and then after that we just follow. We just follow.
Bobby, you didn't hear what Ayala say about CEOs when they're not around. Maybe you're letting in on secrets. Well, I'm going to come back to you afterwards and ask you then about those meetings with the CEO and board members and dealing with the CEO and how you can support IR. But I would maybe talk about how people work with senior management, how you help demonstrate the importance of IR.
So our senior management play active role in our company, even though our company is already listed in for 15 years, but the CEO and senior management is doing actively in our. What the reason is that the stakeholders that are around us, whether it be analysts, shareholders, fund managers who invest in our company, always share insights and also knowledge to our team in regard to macro side of the spa industry in the world, in Asia, in Thailand, as well as any other related information that is very useful in our planning for going forward to become Asia's regional spa leader in Asia. So as I mentioned that our CEO is sparing his hours to ensure that he participates well in all activities that our IR team has assigned and has planned for next coming years. given that we are the first car company to be listed, it's quite difficult and just at first to explain what we do because like for us, spas in Thailand are everywhere, from 5-star spa in luxury resort in hotels to street side mom and pop spa. So we have to classify and interpret to our stakeholders that which spa segment are we going in and which directions we are going forward with our plans and so to conclude is that our senior team is playing active role in our IR activities and they believe that we have received many benefits from participating in these network events and are able to use this insight to develop our business plan.
IR program meant that he had a fast track learning curve in terms of hearing out what the investment community areas of concerns were, what they liked about the company, what they didn't like about the company. The second point that I want to add on was we don't just share or feedback the information to senior management or the executive community. We also share the pertinent matters to the board of directors, which is quite key for us. Having several members of the board who sit on various government agencies and our key shareholder, which is one of the sovereign wealth funds of Malaysia. I think it's important that we feedback these points to them as well, so that they understand what the areas of I guess concerns are affecting Malaysia airports.
That's very interesting. How do you do that? In what format? Is it written reports, or do you make presentations to the board? How do you do that? Go into a little more details.
Well, when it comes to the presentations to the board of directors, there's two that we do in particular. One is a monthly reporting on where the share price stands, what the analyst calls are, where we sit on the local boss. And the second is more of a regular or bi-monthly update on key issues or key questions that we get. So what we do is we present what the areas of concerns are, as well as what the guidance is that we feed back to the investment committee to set, so that it's in line with the board's aspirations and communication plans accordingly.
Okay, and let's stick on that for a moment, because I think it's a very important topic, that feedback both to management and the board. And Melissa, maybe we could follow up with you too. As you said, this is something that you provide your management. What format does it take?
Well, that can range from informal conversations where I would provide feedback, especially if there are a lot of things happening, especially in the property sector. So I do a lot of competitor analysis, so I update them. That's the informal side, but I do also formal presentations, at least monthly, to the CEO and to the board, to be able to update them of how we are being viewed in the community. And usually they will have some sort of maybe instructions or directions on how we can address certain issues if there are issues.
Okay, so Bobby, before we talk about specific IR activities or how you support IR, let's stick on this for a moment, and that is the feedback you get through IR. We heard in the last session about an example of a company's hedging strategy actually being informed or guided by feedback from the investment community. And as Zeid says, the Investor Relations for Malaysia Airports provides this important channel of intelligence through not just to the immediate board of directors, but even by extension to the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Malaysia. How do you accept, or how do you see the feedback you get through IR? And can you even think of ways that it might have guided not just IR activities, but the company's activities?
I guess, first of all, Neil, I view myself really as an integral part of our IR team. I really view our shareholders as owners of the company. Thus, very important for me and my team to be able to provide them with the necessary information, provide them updates of how the company is going. I do quite a bit of investor engagement, whether it be in the investor roadshows or even in Manila. What I've instructed our IR team is if there's an investor who wants to see me here in Manila, it's so easy. We could basically allocate half an hour or 1 hour to see them. So I do see quite a bit of our investors. In terms of feedback, when I actually talk to investors, typically at the end of the conversation, I do ask them specifically what their views are. One of our direction or strategy, any kind of feedback they have. Is there something in the macroeconomic environment, both domestically and globally, that they might want to feed in for us to be aware of, so that we basically have a holistic view, that it's not just information that we're getting from within, but really also from a broader community. And because of that, we hope that we'll be able to tweak our plans a little bit to be able to further improve or increase our execution or increase our investment in particular areas or to pull back in certain areas. So it has actually worked quite well, in terms of being able to interact both ways, us giving information and them giving us their feedback.
Are there certain investors that are better at it than others? I mean, for example, sometimes some companies say that they don't want to meet with hedge funds because they're too short term. But other companies will say they love to meet with hedge funds because they're so smart and opinionated and will tell you what they see happening at other companies and in the markets.
What's important for me is when we actually communicate to the to investors that there's consistency and clarity, right? Regardless whether we're meeting with long-term shareholders or hedge funds, I basically give them the same type of story.
Okay.
And I welcome basically their points of view. I welcome their opinion, and it's now up to me to now decipher whether the feedback that we're getting is something that we could use in terms of tweaking our plans or not.
Okay.
But the way we run the business really is on a long-term basis. But all the information we're getting is something that I think through in a very deliberate way, because you never know what information they might be providing that may actually provide very good guidance for us moving forward.
Okay. Let me ask you a crucial question, and it comes up a lot. Bobby, do you believe that good IR increases the value of the company?
My goal is to make sure that we are fairly valued at any point in time. That there's basically minimum or minimal deviation from what the fair value of the company is. So my instruction to the IR team is not to run up the value of the company. Because, as I've mentioned a while ago, one of the objectives that I've set for our team is to make sure that while you're invested in the company, that you basically get the increase in value over the period that you're actually invested. So, good IR, does it increase the value of the company? As I've mentioned, it's not my goal. My goal is to make sure that good IR gives the company the fair valuation of what the company is worth.
Okay, excellent point. Now, again, we'd be pleased to take questions if there are any in the audience, and you could approach the microphone. I'll try to keep my eyes open if anyone comes up. Are there any just now? Any questions? Let me know. Okay, I'll keep my eyes open. Let me now go down and let's talk about some specific activities, some highlights of your IR programs. it'd be great to get some examples of what you all do, of events, publications, innovations, whether it's things that you've done over the past year or two or things that you have planned. This is a great opportunity to give your peers in the IR community some ideas, right? It's hopefully they'll all be able to you can give them ideas rather than have them steal them, right? So, Melissa, would you mind starting? What are some of the highlights of your IR program?
Well, one was really bringing the CEO out. She has not gone out, I think, since we had a secondary offering. So that was maybe 8 years ago, and that was a breakthrough because we really saw the movement in the share price, and I think it's more of appreciating the value of the company because we told the story to a lot of potential investors and also existing investors. We also, well, if you look at our investor presentation, it's really thick. It's about 80 pages, but we don't discuss each page for 5 minutes, right? So, but we captured our strategy and our story over the years, and we also indicated our plans and targets. So we do the presentation, so it will take 1 hour. But what we also have is when the investors go back to their offices, they have complete information about the company, and they have more time to understand the story after we've already discussed this with them. So those are the two new things that we did. Of course, those are not new. I mean, it's not new technology, but it's also, redoing what we used to do and thinking of new ways to be able to put the story out.
Okay, excellent. And Narun, I think you probably have a good job in a way, doing IR for a spa company. It reminds me of a company I know in North America that is a baker. They make cakes and cookies, and whenever they go to investors, the investors think, oh, cakes and cookies, and it makes them feel good. It must be the same thing talking about spas, and perhaps even taking them to spas, is it?
So yeah, some of our strategies in the first few years of listed in the exchange market is that, as I mentioned, that some are not familiar what our business is doing, because in the past 16 years, our main targets are mainly foreign tourists. So our brands are more well known amongst the East Asian population in Hong Kong, in Japan, in Korea, whereas the Thai market, we have relatively low market share. So the analysts who are the local analysts, they are maybe lesser knowledge about our business. So the first thing is to get them more familiarized with what we do. We have 3 spa brands targeting different segments. We have 5-star, 4-star, and 3-star. So we have to take them around, do the site visits, see how traffic it is, what are the differences between the different classification of our businesses, and actually they do mystery shopping as well. So they become actually a customer to experience what our services we are offer. On the opposite hand, having a foreign analyst coming in, it's actually easier for us because they know our business quite well. Some of them, their partners themselves are our customers for the past 10 years. So they know the business from the top to the bottom. They know how we communicate with the customers, how we do marketing and PR, how we do operations. So it's like selling our products to the customers on a different aspect from being just a customer but being an analyst. So they are sharing the views of the operations as well as the financials. That is useful for them to do analysis.
So do the analysts actually get a massage or a makeover or?
Yes, to some extent. On our first day of trading, we have some therapists on hand at the Stock Exchange of Thailand to provide, our sample of services that we provide. So it's actually a new way of, bringing in new services or new business into the Stock Exchange of Thailand.
Excellent. Zed, let's talk about some of the highlights of your IR. Perhaps you don't have massage therapists and so on, but you have airports. You have an airport to show, and what are some of the things that you've been doing in your IR program?
Well, Neil, we have a duty-free business, so all we do is we give chocolates to the investors and analysts. But on a more serious note, I think everyone will acknowledge that in 2014, aviation landscape went through a very difficult period with the 3 unfortunate tragedies. So what we did since then, in light of the follow-through sentiments affecting the industry, was we engaged more with the investment community. I think we didn't limit ourselves to just the buy side and
Go in a new job.
I think effectively when you look at it in hindsight, the CFO came in with a clean slate. He had no preconceived notions about the company. Had no baggage at all. So what he gathered as feedback, input from the investment community was quite critical in how he manages the company on a financial perspective. Because of course you can only hear, we shouldn't only hear what's on the inside, but also from the outside perspective. So what we did was that we gathered the key points and put it together in a presentation pack, which we then fed back to the board of directors to say, these are the key moving parts of the company. These are how people on the outside look into it, and these are where it impacts the financial numbers ultimately.
Okay, excellent. Any questions at this time? Yes, we have a question back there. If you don't mind approaching the microphone, it'd be great for the whole room to hear. Thank you. And introduce yourself if you don't mind.
Sure thing. Hi, my name is Quincy Tanner. I'm with AWR Lloyd, which is a corporate finance advisory firm here, and I've had the pleasure of working in investor relations for the past few years. I find it a fascinating field, and thank you to the speakers and thank you to IR Awards for making this possible. As I reflect on everything that you're saying, I asked myself, what are some of the interesting waves or trends that are happening in this sector and in this line of business? And when I look to the US, I find very interesting this wave of shareholder activism.
Aware of this and what's going on, and one of the things that we've seen is a shift in attitude. We used to hear IR and senior management talk about how to fight activists. Now it's how to work with activists.
Long-term shareholder value or short-term shareholder value. If it's in line with long-term shareholder value, then I have no problem actually moving towards that direction. But if the shareholder is looking for something that is of an immediate gain to the detriment of value creation over the long term, then that's something that I put aside. And let the shareholder decide what they want to do in terms of their ownership.
Okay, so it's an interesting point. So you have to distinguish, activism per se isn't good or bad. There's short term and there's long term, right? And you can distinguish between them. Can any of you else, have any of you looked at this and thought about your company's vulnerability or your preparedness for activism? This is something a lot of companies in North America and Europe are going through. Even if there's no activists on the horizon, no sign of an activist in the shareholder base, the board and IR will stop and look and say, could an activist approach us? And if so, are we prepared? Any comments on that?
Well, to be honest, we have not discussed this, but I think it's a possibility. And I think what we can do now is just to be consistent, as Mr. Lee said. We more or less, we already know our strategy for growing the business, and we communicate that with investors, and we think this is the best way to grow the business. Now, most probably we would have investors who agree with us, right? And so I guess if we have the same objectives and the same mindset of how to grow the business, there's no problem. There could be a problem if we have different objectives, right? So I guess I don't think we can be prepared enough, but I think the importance is we are consistent with our strategy. We try to, we have a strategy and we execute it so that investors will be happy with how we have managed the business. I think that's the key.
Good point. Okay. Any other questions at this point? Well, Bobby, let me come back to talking about the long term and keeping that focus on the long term. And I was interested to see that under your predecessor, Tony Aquino, that Ayala had crafted the 5, 10, 15 program, aiming to achieve within 5 years net income 10 billion for the company, return on equity of 15%. And that's bold, setting out such a long-term and firm goal. What's the thinking behind establishing and declaring that kind of goal, and then presumably along the way talking about progress?
A couple of things. So my predecessor basically established the 5 10 15 when I actually assumed the leadership of Ayala Land. We now basically moved to a new goal, which basically moves us to 2020. It's called the 2020 40 plan, which basically targets 40 billion in net income by 2020, coming from 11.7 billion at the end of 2013. So clearly a fairly high target that we've set for ourselves. And there are really two reasons that we do this. One is we want to make sure that we get alignment in the organization first of what we're trying to pursue. Okay, so at that point when we did this in 2014, when we said from 11.7 billion pesos to 40 billion, when we set this goal, frankly, we didn't have the plans on how we're going to get to 40 billion. So the first reason we did that is now for the organization to look for the opportunities that will get us to 40 billion. Because without the goal, then the organization is not really clear what we're trying to aspire for. So we set fairly bold targets so that the whole organization now comes up with plans for our investment committee to look at, to see how we're going to allocate our capital that will allow us to get to 40 billion. That's the most important reason why we set the goal. It's for the organization to rally behind a target. Second reason is to provide clarity as well to our owners, our shareholders, on what we're trying to achieve. Okay, it's a 7-year plan. We're making good progress on that plan. But obviously, the success of the plan hinges on a lot of different factors. Global economy, domestic economy.
But nevertheless, having a plan allows us to move towards a particular direction as a unified organization. And I think that is the main benefit of having that. It's one, clarity in the organization where we want to go, and two, provide clarity to our owners on how we want to move the company forward.
That's very interesting. So it is first an internal goal. It's something for the organization itself to say, number one, to provide clarity for the management of the organization, and secondly, for the owners. It's a bold statement and an impressive one. And related to that, the next thing I wanted to talk about, and I will be keeping an eye out. Any questions just now? Well, I wanted to talk about the internal IR, and get a feeling for what you do. We've talked a little bit about the reporting to the board, feedback to